Hey everybody, I wanted to take the time to kind of make an impromptu video. So, they're finally making an actual new adaptation of The Wizard of Oz, of the original story. And I think the reaction from a lot of people is, oh, another one. But really, this is the first major adaptation since the 1939 movie. I mean, we've had The Wiz, we've had Muppets, Wizard of Oz, we've had different TV stuff that are like new takes. We've had the Emerald City TV series. But this is the first time since 1939 that we're getting a major theatrical, like actual motion picture that is an adaptation of the original Baum story. And that's crazy to me because I've imagined this for years. Like ever since I was a kid, I was like, what if they made a new like Wizard of Oz, like what if they made something like the book or just a new version of it? I thought of that for years, and I wondered if it would ever happen because the effect the movie has, the original 1939 movie, I mean, the impact it's had on pop culture is unreal. And the pull it's had on people is just insane. Like, that movie, the effect it's had is just mind boggling. And because of the effect it's had, people don't want another version of Oz. They don't want to accept any sort of other Oz remake, any sort of other adaptation. Maybe they'll accept other versions of different stories, but the original story, doing that over again, it seems like taboo. And it's been almost 100 years now, and it took that long to make another adaptation. I think it goes to show, like, just what a massive grasp the 1939 movie has on Oz. I think if that movie never happened, we would have seen many more adaptations. Because think about how often stuff gets like rebooted or reimagined. There's been so many versions of Alice in Wonderland and just stuff like that. And The Wizard of Oz, there's been more than the 1939 movie, of course, but they've never tried the original story in a major film again since. And it's kind of a landmark, it's kind of a milestone, and the Oz franchise has been dormant for a while. The last mainstream thing regarding Oz was Oz the Great and Powerful, and that was 8 years ago, I think. It's a long time ago, technically. So it's kind of crazy that Oz will be back in the mainstream again. And I think that's what I want to talk about first, what I want to touch on first. Oz being in the mainstream. Like, will Oz become a massive franchise? Because it totally could be a franchise. It's got all the ingredients. It's got 14 original books, and that's just the original ones. There's so many different works of Oz, and even if there was only the original book, there's so much stuff you can do with the Fantasyland, and so many spin-offs and sequels, and with the world we live in, with the climate media is in, with when everything is a cinematic universe, they can make so many Oz movies. But I don't know how to feel about the idea of like a rejuvenated Oz fandom, because I love how the Oz community is smaller and it's not like this heap of drama like big franchises like Star Wars or something like that. Like, there's always controversy, there's always like fandom fights, there's just strange discourse. And I like how the Oz community is smaller, and I am kind of worried about the floodgates being opened. Because yes, The Wizard of Oz is one of the biggest stories, one of the biggest movies ever made, but the fan base itself is small, and I like that. And it almost feels like my little like safe space is being intruded on almost, just because of the fact that if this movie is successful, then yeah, there could be a huge new fandom, and it just feels odd to me. It's like a new era that could be happening. But that brings me to my next point. Will this movie even happen? Because I don't know what it is with Oz, but so many times they announce something and absolutely nothing comes from it. I swear I've heard about remakes before and they never actually came to fruition. And there's just been so many Oz projects like that. Like the Wicked movie, like they announce that movie every 5 years, it seems like, and nothing ever happens with it. And again, I think a lot of that could be because of the hold the 1939 movie has on people. And that's why it really is so bold to do another one because, I mean, it's the most famous movie of all time, pretty much. I mean, I've seen the tweets and the articles. They're all labeling it Wizard of Oz remake, and everyone in the comments is like, no, you can't do that. That's sinful. Like that's like sacred. You can't remake the Wizard of Oz. But that's the thing, right? It's not a remake. It's simply another adaptation. It's the thing with Spider-Man or Batman. There's so many different movie versions, and it's always labeled a reboot or a remake. But it's not really a remake. It's just simply another adaptation of the book. But people will see it as a remake. And that's not what it is. They've made it clear that's not what it is. They're not going to redo the 1939 movie, which I would be very much against redoing that movie. But another adaptation is a different story. That brings me to how I feel about the existence of this movie in general, which is the most important part of the video. I don't know how I feel about it. I have mixed feelings because I kind of wish they would do a different book instead of doing the one everyone knows. And part of that is because of the nostalgia and the attachment I have to the original movie, to the 1939 movie. Like, it's something so personal and, like, it is sacred in a way to me. So to see another major movie that does the same story just feels odd to me. And yes, the 1939 movie is not the original Wizard of Oz. It's not like it has some right to be the only version of that story. But I don't know, there's just something about it that feels odd to see it done again. But aside from that, just from a more objective, creative standpoint, the Oz franchise has so much potential, and the Wizard of Oz story has been done so many times. Why not do something that hasn't been done yet? There's 14 original books, 13 others from the original that you could pull from. And I feel like it's kind of doing a disservice to Oz because there's so much creativity that we haven't seen in those books, in movies. So it's kind of a disservice to introduce more of faithful stuff from Baum and to just drop the same story that everyone knows. Because yes, there is some incredible stuff they could do. There's stuff that we haven't seen adapted into live action from that book that would be incredible to see. But no matter how you slice it, it's the same story. We all know like how it's gonna go. Everyone knows the basic beats, the basic pattern. You know what the moral is gonna be. You know Scarecrow and Tin Man and Lion, they're all gonna be met within a specific order. You know Dorothy's gonna get swept up by a tornado and land in Munchkin Land. You know they're gonna go off to see the wizard, and they're gonna melt the witch, and the wizard's gonna be exposed, and then Dorothy's gonna click her heels, and she's gonna go home and say, "There's no place like home." And yeah, we know those basic beats, so it's like, will people be interested in this? I mean, we've seen that story played out so many times, and yeah, I know that the 1939 movie has a lot of differences from the book, but I do feel like when people mention them, it's sort of overplayed and overstated. Like, yeah, there are a lot of differences. There's tonal differences. Dorothy isn't the same age. There's Glinda. There's so many scenes that we don't see in the movie that are from the book. But I mean, any book adaptation is going to be different. And for 1939, I feel like they captured the aesthetic as well as they could. And like, I don't think it's that unfaithful to the book. I mean, it has the same spirit. It has the same moral. It has the same general beats. I don't think it's as unfaithful as people say it is. So I feel like making a version that's more faithful to the book isn't solely enough to make the movie interesting. But it would be incredible to see like more book accurate visuals for sure. Like Return to Oz, like that, modern day effects, that would be incredible to see. But it also would kind of be more incredible in a new story, which again, not really a new story because it's from a book that's 100 years old. But people don't know the stories to the sequels of The Wizard of Oz. And it would be new to audiences. I think that might have been a better decision. But I guess maybe, they want to reintroduce it and all that stuff. So I kind of get it. I think my biggest worry, though, is that it's not more faithful to the book and it's something else entirely. And it's like, the Emerald City show where it's like trying to be dark and edgy. And it's like that typical thing that remakes always get made fun of. When people make fun of remakes, it's always like, oh, it's more dark and edgy, and it's always more cynical, and it just kind of strips away the wonder of the original story. I really hope they don't do that. I really hope they don't do that. And I also hope they don't make it a musical because we already have a musical version. Make it interesting, make it something different. Make it like the book, make it more like the book aesthetically. I think just kind of have that appeal, like, oh, it looks more like the book. So now there's this appeal that it has that it didn't have before. I've said it before, what makes Oz special is the blend of darkness and purity and hopefulness. I think you have to mix those things, and if you go too far in either direction, it's not really Oz anymore. There's a fine line, and I don't know if many creatives have really succeeded in creating that fine line that exists with the Oz universe. But aside from my skeptical nature regarding this movie, and despite my worries and my concerns, and honestly my anxieties over it, because I love Oz in general, and knowing that it's going to be, propped up again, and the floodgates are kind of going to be open again, is kind of scary to me. And I also know New Line Cinema, they have association with MGM, so I really hope it's not just retreading the 1939 movie, because that'll really make people angry. But what I'm saying is, yes, I do feel a lot of excitement from this because I love Oz in general. I love Oz, and if you can give me that same magic, that same feeling I get when I watch the original movie, when I've read the books, when I've seen good Oz media like Return to Oz, or when I watch the 80s anime, just I want to feel that magic, and it's hard to capture, but I hope they do it because a part of me is really excited for new Oz media. I'm just very worried that they'll screw it up and it'll just be a traditional, cynical, overly edgy remake. The kind that's become a cliche, basically. I really hope they do it justice. And I do wonder how this movie will do. I mean, we don't really know what the state of theaters in general will be, and the state of the industry will be with the coronavirus. So it'll be interesting to see how this movie fares up. I know a lot of people are going to be against the idea of this movie because, I mean, like we've been talking about, the 39 movie is, I mean, it's the gospel. Doing that over again is like sacrilegious to people. People are going to view it as a remake no matter what. And fantasy movies in general are kind of not the thing right now. I know remakes do well a lot of the time. I mean, Disney remakes, they do well. But will this Oz movie do well? Because fantasy, it's not like the thing right now. It's not in necessarily. And Oz the Great and Powerful, for example, our most recent example. I mean, it did relatively well at the box office, but it wasn't like a smash or anything, and people forgot it pretty quickly. So I really wonder how this movie's going to do. I really wonder. I think they're going to have to market it just right and, of course, make a truly good, a great movie for people to really care, because it has to be not good, but great to even come close to letting people accept it with how beloved the 1939 movie is. I guess my final thoughts to anyone worried or concerned about this: don't let it get to you. At worst, it'll be a bad movie. It'll be a bad movie, and you'll still have the books. You'll still have the original film. You'll still have Return to Oz. You'll still have all the animated works. I mean, hell, you'll still have, you'll still have the original musicals before the actual 1939 movie. You'll have all that stuff. It'll still be there. And at best, it'll be a great movie, and Oz will be reinvigorated, and I don't know, there's a bittersweetness to it because there could be a massive change in, the Oz community in general because of this movie. So we'll see what happens. We'll see, if this movie actually gets off the ground. We'll see if it's good or not. But don't panic, because your favorite versions of Oz are always going to be there. Whether it's a literal physical copy of what you love or in your imagination, Oz will always be there. And we all have our own idea of what Oz is. We all have our preferences. If this movie fulfills them, awesome. If it doesn't, oh well, we have other versions. We have what our mind, what our imagination conjures up. But let me know what you think about this. I'm really curious to hear what people think about this news, the first massive piece of news we've heard for Oz in a while now. I'm of mixed minds about it. I'm excited, but also very anxious. So we'll see though. It'll probably be a while before it comes out, at least a few years. So it'll be very interesting to follow this news. So if you like this video, you can like, subscribe, comment, and all that stuff. I have my social media in the description. If you ever want to, you can shoot me a message. I'm always down to talk about Oz and all that stuff. But have a good day, and oh, also, I genuinely would love to be like an extra or something in this movie. So, New Line Cinema, ever need an extra, I'm your guy. You can't miss out on all this, you know.